AB 692, which is very low carbon fuel sources.
Right.
3% bill.
All right. So it's nice to be here, and I just hope we do as well on the next bill. At this State of the State address, Governor Brown set an ambitious goal of reducing petroleum use in cars and trucks up to 50% by 2030. AB 692 helps support this goal by encouraging development of very low carbon fuels by requiring California to procure those fuels. So there are alternatives like this. They, however, are going to be required to be scaled up. That requires millions of dollars in investments, and the companies that are going to do that scale up need to know there's a market. Right now, the Defense Department has become a market for these fuels, and we would like the state of California to do the same. So there are many advanced low-carbon fuel technologies coming online, and this would allow the use of these very low-carbon fuels to reduce the use of conventional petroleum. Remember, if we want to reduce petroleum by 50%, we need things that are less than 50% in terms of the generation, and that's the point of calling these particular items out. AB 692 defines very low carbon transportation fuel as a liquid or gaseous fuel that has no more than 40% of the carbon intensity of its closest comparable petroleum fuel. What that is defined by the Air Board. A few examples of these types of very low carbon fuels include bio and renewable diesel, renewable natural gas, and cellulosic ethanol. AB 692 requires that beginning in January 1, 2017, so we're giving this some time, very low carbon transportation fuels must comprise 3% of the total state of California transportation fuels portfolio, increasing by 1% every year until 2020. AB 692 is not picking a particular fuel or technology, but providing certainty in the very low carbon fuel market that California will be a stable purchaser of these fuels. With me to testify in support of the bill are Mr. Louis Brown, representing the California Biodiesel Alliance, and Dr. Graham Noyes from the Low Carbon Fuels Coalition.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Louis Brown on behalf of the California Biodiesel Alliance. We've been supportive of this bill, and for all the reasons that the author has stated, the certainty that this will create for biodiesel producers in the state of California is absolutely necessary. We've received some of that through local communities throughout the state that have gone in this direction. The city and county of San Francisco for a number of years have incorporated biodiesel into their fleets. Santa Monica and others have done the same. We think it's now time and appropriate with the goals that the governor and the legislature have put forward in reducing petroleum use that the state do the same. Therefore, we ask for an aye vote.
Doctor?
Should correct the record. Graham Noyes with the Low Carbon Fuels Coalition. I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, which probably takes me down a notch in some people's view. But
not with this panel. Not with us. We're okay with it.
But here in support of the AB 692, the Low Carbon Fuels Coalition is a technology group of renewable fuel and low carbon fuel producers and developers, including fuels from waste, fuels from natural gas streams, biodiesel, ethanol, drop-in gasoline, so the full range of fuels. And one of the reasons that we are so supportive of this bill is it is technology neutral. It sends a strong market signal, which is exactly what producers and developers need, particularly in California. The low carbon fuel standard has sent a strong demand signal. Most of that supply is actually coming from out of state. So having in-state demand is important, having growing demand is important. Comparable federal programs have been very effective that have been structured in the same way. Referring specifically to a comment that was made. There was an excellent analysis done for this, but in one respect, there was a question around the clarity in reference to the petroleum fuel. From our perspective, the language is clear. If one were dealing with a diesel fleet, that would be the comparison fuel, the diesel fuel. If one were dealing with a natural gas fleet, conventional fossil fuel, natural gas would be the comparison. So within the fuel world, we would say the existing language is clear and support the bill strongly. Thank you.
Others in support of AB 692.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Johannes Escudero with the Coalition for Renewable Natural Gas. For all the reasons previously stated, very much in strong support of AB 692 and request your aye vote today.
Next.
Matt Klopfenstein with the Sacramento Municipal Utility District. We have a supportive amended position. We'd like to see electricity included in the definition so that DGS is not limited in the fleet purchases it makes. Thank you.
Shopping a bill.
Jamie Miner on behalf of DuPont, also in support.
Charles Watson on behalf of CalSTART in support. Thank you.
Good morning, Ryan Kenny, Clean Energy in strong support. Thank you.
Others? Opposition to AB 692? Our tax people? Okay, let's bring it back to the committee. Questions of the author? Senator Leno.
Assemblyman, good to see you again. I know
Yes,
you've been
we are
working
seeing a lot
on,
of each other.
Yes, I know you've been working on low carbon fuels for some years now, and you had a bill that took a slightly different approach last year. Right. Do you remember what the oppositional argument was? I know I think I got stopped in Senate Transportation.
I think the biggest problem is that there was already a program, low carbon fuels, and it was felt that the agency itself, if it wanted it, the low carbon fuel standard, if it wanted to change that, it could and include very low carbon fuels in that. And in the other thing is they were in the middle of a lawsuit rulemaking. It just wasn't a time to bring the bill forward. And I will concede to the opposition that this is something that they can do if they want, and I will leave that to them. This, again, is strictly looking at the state putting its money where its mouth is.
Right. So we, as you well know, have used state or in some cases even local governments to send, as was mentioned, that market signal so that the demand for the technology at hand increases exponentially and cost falls equally and then ever in greater parity with fossil fuels. So I think you're onto something, and pleased to support the bill. I move it as well.
Thank you.
Very much. Seeing no other questions, you may close.
I am very glad that I've been able to see Senator Leno at 5 separate committees this week. And to see my senator as well as chair of the committee. So it's just been a great day, and I request your aye vote.
The chair will be voting aye. Please call the roll.
Item 15, AB 692 by Assemblymember Quirk. The motion is due pass and refer to Committee on Appropriations. Senators Wieckowski.
Aye.
Wieckowski, aye. Gaines. Bates. Bates, no. Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Jackson. Aye. Jackson, aye. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Pavley. 4-1.
We'll keep that open for the absent members.
Thank you very much,
Have a
Senator.
nice morning. Assemblymember Levine. AB 157, the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Senators. One of the worst bottlenecks in the Bay Area EV commute occurs on Highway 101 and Interstate 580 east, approaching San Rafael and Richmond Bridge. To address this, the Bay Area Toll Authority, under the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, is proposing to open an existing third lane on the bridge for the eastbound evening peak commute. Additionally, this project will include adding a bike lane to the bridge to close a significant gap in the 270-mile Bay Trail. As the committee analysis points out, this bridge was built in 1956 with 3 lanes in each direction. Consequently, restoring that third lane now does not involve any major bridge construction. However, time estimates for completion of this project are as long as 3 years. AB 157 will help speed up that process by as much as 18 months by making clear the design work can be done concurrently with environmental review. With me today to testify is Cornelius Burke with the Bay Area Council.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and Senators. My name is Cornelius Burke. I'm with the Bay Area Council. The Bay Area Council is a not-for-profit public policy organization representing hundreds of the largest employers in the Bay Area. We're in strong support of AB 157. This bill will deliver widespread congestion relief to Marin County and the Bay Area. Rising traffic delays are a serious concern to employees and employers. Drivers suffer for over 4,000 hours of lost productivity and delays, contributing to over 80,000 pounds of avoidable greenhouse gas emissions. Not only will AB 157 bring mobility relief to the Bay Area, it will serve as a model how government can cut red tape and better serve its citizens. For these reasons and more, we respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Others in support of AB 157.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Kira Ross on behalf of the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members. In strong support for the bill, we just wanted to note that in addition to all the information you heard earlier, we believe that this bill would also provide improvement to air quality and the health and well-being of the residents and drivers in our communities. And so for that reason, we believe it's really important and we would strongly support the bill.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Gus Corey on behalf of the Transportation Authority of Marin. I believe that we were inadvertently left off of the support on the analysis, and so just want to reiterate our support for the bill. It's critically
noted.
Thank you very much. It's critical in relieving congestion between the two counties, as the Assembly member has noted before, so we ask for your aye vote.
Andrew Langley on behalf of the County of Marin in support. Thank you.
Okay.
Jeremy Smith on behalf of the State Building Trades also in support.
All right. Opposition to AB 157, other than the chair? No. So our analysis and comment number 6 saying that NEPA this is not going to expedite the federal environmental process, maybe of local concern, but this bill, I think that's the goal, right? Your testimony is that it's 18 months. Your comment?
Yeah, you're precisely correct. This doesn't alter NEPA whatsoever, and this does not predetermine the outcome of the EIR, and we're just hoping to speed up this process.
Well, comment number 7 then says that Caltrans already has the ability to dual track once they have 10 or 20% of the analysis started.
Yeah, so they hadn't chosen to do this. We have advanced the bill, and since then they've decided to go ahead, but they're in support. The Metropolitan Transportation Commission is in support of this bill because it clarifies that they have the ability to do this in case there are any legal hurdles that are confronted with.
But if they're already doing it, then what would make the bill necessary?
Well, this actually, holds them to making sure that this occurs. I think that the public is very concerned about red tape, as Mr. Burke had mentioned, and we're putting pressure to them to make sure that this does occur. And we actually show, and I think MTC and BAT have done a very good job of showing that they are, in fact, listening to what the public is doing and also paying attention to the legislative action that this bill has put forward. So this has put the pressure on to make sure that this project does get done in a timely manner.
Questions? Other questions? Senator Leno.
My one concern or thought might be that this is actually not a district bill because it's going to impact many districts, including the one that I represent, though I've, of course, recently represented yours as well. When we were in the midst of conference committee, I got some messages from some folks who wanted to see if we might just include some little trailer bill language that would make this project just happen. And I thought that was maybe a bridge too far. But I think that your approach here is appropriate, and with regard to the chair's appropriate question, that if minimally it's belt to suspenders, and anything can go haywire at times. I think to put this into statute makes very good sense, and we want to see this happen as quickly as possible with all appropriate process.
Thank you, Senator.
I move the bill.
There's a motion. Other
No,
questions?
I was just going to.
Other questions?
Senator Leno, great job.
You may close.
I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Please call the roll.
Item 5, AB 157 by Assemblymember Levine. The motion is due pass. Senators Wykowski,
Not voting.
Gaines, Bates, Bates, aye. Hill,
Aye.
Hill, aye. Jackson, Jackson, aye. Leno,
Aye.
Leno, aye. Pavley. 4-0.
You have four votes. We'll keep the roll open. Item number 16, 761.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. AB 761 establishes a framework to evaluate the potential for using best management practices on agricultural lands, ranches, and rangelands to increase carbon sequestration and water retention. Best practices may include compost application, riparian restoration, promotion of native grasses and plants, and planting windbreaks. These efforts could be low-hanging fruit that will go a long way toward curbing the effects of climate change and reduce water needs. Initial research shows we can remove 3 years' worth of emissions from the atmosphere while reducing water needs by as much as 25%. This bill will help us determine if these efforts will be successful. With me here today in support of the bill are Katrina Robinson with the Carbon Cycle Institute and Mr. Oldfield with the California Farm Bureau.
Please.
Thank you, Chair and members. Katrina Robinson here on behalf of the Carbon Cycle Institute in support. This bill is part of a statewide effort. This bill is part of a statewide effort to help working lands through California produce quantifiable greenhouse gas benefits and carbon sequestration benefits as part of our climate change solutions. Long before we were roaming the planet and convening legislative hearings, the Earth regulated its own greenhouse gas emissions by using vegetation to store atmospheric carbon in plant matter and in soils. The Marine Carbon Project, in collaboration with UC Berkeley, has conducted research on rangelands to show that we can actually manage our rangelands and ag lands in a similar manner to sequester carbon and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And we can do it with quantifiable benefits. The COMET Planner tools and COMET Farm tools developed by the USDA in conjunction with the Natural Resources Conservation Service and Colorado State University allow us to quantify the benefits, which I know this committee and members of this committee have been very interested in. Carbon farming practices, we've heard a little bit about them today. They also have additional co-benefits, including water sequestration, holding capacity within soils. Carbon farming practices increase organic matter in soils, and that organic matter can hold up to 20 times its weight in water. This helps reduce the need for irrigation and helps farmers and ranchers adapt to drought conditions. Second, several carbon farming practices like riparian restoration improve habitat for wildlife. And third, carbon farming practices increase both land productivity and crop yields, which should help farmers and ranchers as they continue to operate under difficult climate change conditions and difficult economic conditions. This bill will also help us continue to build out quantification tools for in other fields and natural resources, including forestry and open space. And I respectfully request an aye vote.
The committee heard Senator Wolk's bill earlier, and this bill seems to nicely expand that working lands component in the sequestration.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Senator. We've been working very closely with Senator Wolk's office on the two bills.
Next.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Justin Oldfield with the California Cattlemen's Association. I actually did talk with Ms. Corey as well, and speaking on behalf of her, I want to echo the comments of Katrina, and wanted to also provide our support for AB 761. Ranchers are providing numerous environmental benefits on our state's rangelands, and one of which is carbon sequestration. We're very excited to work with the author to look at providing a formula and framework for doing these pilot projects on the ground. And so we respectfully ask for your aye vote. Thank you.
Others in support of working lands increasing carbon sequestration. Please
Sylvia Solisha on behalf of the City and County of San Francisco and the Office of Mayor Ed Lee in support.
Corey Bolus on behalf of Santa Clara County Open Space Authority and the Big Sur Land Trust, also in support.
Kim Schneider on behalf of the California Composting Coalition and Stop Waste in support. Thank you.
John Dane with California Resource Recovery Association in support of the legislation. Thank you.
Claire Desser on behalf of Audubon and Caltrout in support.
Genevieve Avedon on behalf of Californians Against Waste in support. Thank you.
Julia Carrera on behalf of the Small Farmers Association in support.
Amy Trainer, Director of the West Marin Environmental Action Committee in support.
Kelly Dillon on behalf of California Lake Conservation Voters in support.
Good morning, Carrie Timmer with Sierra Business Council in support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Mark Fenstermaker on behalf of the Marin Agricultural Land Trust in support.
Thank you. Opposition to AB 761. Seeing none, let's bring it back to committee. Questions of the author on item number 16761. Is there a motion by any member?
Yes, I do move the bill.
Senator Hill. Seeing no questions, you may close.
I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
All right, Assistant, please call the roll.
Item 16, AB 761 by Assemblymember Levine. The motion is due pass and refer to Committee on Appropriations. Senators Wieckowski.
Aye.
Wieckowski, aye. Gaines. Bates. Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Jackson.
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Leno.
Aye.
Leno, aye. Pavley. Aye. Pavley, aye. 5-0.
We have a missing member. We'll keep the roll open. Enjoy the rest of your morning.
You too, thank you.
Before we call, I want to reopen the roll on item number 2, SR 37 by De Leon. Please call the absent members.
Item 2, SR 37 by De Leon. The motion is due pass. Current vote is 4-0. Absent members, Gaines. Hill.
Aye.
Hill, aye. Pavley.
2,
Item 2.
the PAPL resolution.
Pavley, aye.
Pavley, aye.
I'm going to close the roll, and the vote was
6-0.
6-0, and I'll ask that we have transmitted to the Senate floor. With that done, let's turn to item number 6, Assemblymember Wood and the cultivation of marijuana.
These are all in numerical order.
Okay, I was going to see if Fran did. I thought this Fran did, but no. Check with Fran. She's, okay. Good to see you. Oh, and Gaines. Isn't Gaines going on this? Okay, all right, so I got it. Gotcha. Also.
Good morning, Senators and Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to present Assembly Bill 243.
And we appreciate the visual.
I'm all about visuals. Thank you very much. In 1996, voters approved Proposition 215, also known as the Compassionate Use Act. As such, a person can grow marijuana for medical use under prescription referred to as a 215 card. And over time, a system has evolved where patients can purchase medical marijuana at dispensaries. For the past 18 years, medical marijuana growers and medical marijuana patients have lived in a murky gray area where state and federal law are in direct conflict. And quite frankly, it has prevented us from establishing reasonable environmental protections to already impacted watersheds. Currently, there are very few regulations for medical marijuana growers. Add to that a large and flourishing destructive grow community by people motivated only by profit, and we're seeing unimaginable environmental damages to the North Coast region of the state and now spreading throughout the state. According to the Lost Coast Outpost, an online news source in Humboldt County, just this Monday, the National Guard and the Humboldt County Sheriff's Office raided, quote-unquote, environmentally destructive marijuana farms on the Yurok Reservation. Vice Chair of the tribe, Susan Maston, was quoted as saying, "It breaks my heart to see these 10,000 plant grows sucking our watersheds dry while our community is on the brink of running out of water. It is unacceptable and it is immoral," end quote. Plants can consume between a gallon of water a day and 10 gallons of water a day. The estimates vary widely based on growing conditions and the size of the plant. In addition to illegal water diversions, we are seeing unpermitted land grading and road construction, discharge of sediments into streams, pollutants into waterways, as well as contamination of water and soil by pesticides, rodenticides, fertilizers, and fuels. Mammals, birds, and fish are dying horrible deaths through poisons left behind to protect crops, and often left behind long after the growers leave an area. Last year, a thriving and healthy stream, Sproul Creek in the county of Humboldt, went dry for the first time that anyone can remember, which devastated the watershed's ecosystem, which is home to 5 endangered salmon species. Unfortunately, state officials believe that the stream went dry from illegal water diversions from marijuana cultivators. In an effort to protect the environment, last year the governor approved a $1.8 million multi-agency pilot program in Northern California called the Watershed Enforcement Team, or WET. WET consists of a partnership of the State Water Resources Control Board, the North Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife to minimize harm to wildlife and watersheds. AB 243 will continue the momentum of WET by establishing parameters that can guide statewide standards and make this system permanent, and make this a permanent statewide program. My bill directs all 9 regional water quality control boards to develop environmental protection guidelines to address wastewater discharges from medical marijuana farms. But we cannot address the environmental problems without looking at the source, which is the cultivation of marijuana. AB 243 also seeks to establish a regulatory system that puts some basic parameters around the cultivation of medical marijuana. As written, my bill also establishes a program to help law enforcement properly identify medical marijuana plants. In its current form, the bill calls for a $50 per plant fee to the cultivator for a tagging program with a unique identifier. This would allow state and local officials to monitor the number of plants a watershed can support. The revenue would be directed in the following way: 10% for program administration, 30% for funding of the watershed enforcement team, 30% for law enforcement, and 30% for environmental mitigation on public and private lands. A tag program also improves quality control and enforcement. In Colorado, a similar cannabis identifier program helps law enforcement distinguish permitted plants from illegal ones. The identifiers make it easy to trace contaminations and health hazards to their source. Local, county, and city ordinances regarding cultivations would be honored. A cultivator would have to apply to a city or county for a provisional cultivation permit. The cultivator would then get a license from the Department of Food and Agriculture before cultivation could begin. If a city or county has banned cultivation, the state would not preempt this with this legislation. If a city or county allows cultivation, they would need to opt into the program to realize the resources of the program. And if a city or county chooses to remain silent, then the California Department of Food and Agriculture would run the program at its state level. The tagging program came as a result of conversations with BOE staff, and we are continuing to work closely with them. I also understand there are a lot of stakeholders that have been working on the marijuana issue for some time, but I feel the environmental concerns, while talked about, have offered no real solutions, which is why I've worked hard to keep my bill separate and laser focused on these issues. My district is ground zero for marijuana activities, production, and environmental damages. My bill simply seeks to address the environmental issues that are having enormous effects on the residents of the district I represent, where an estimated 60 to 70% of the marijuana consumed in the United States is grown. My intent is to create some environmental regulations around medical marijuana farms, and I believe that cultivation oversight over the number of plants is a way that we can protect the water in our grossly affected watersheds. Comments I heard in Governance and Finance last week from patient advocates I'd like to address in advance as I expect them to come up again. The bill is, the question or the comment was the bill's more focused on outdoor grows and does not address indoor cultivation. We are working to clarify some of those concerns, but whether it's grown indoors or out, there are environmental effects that must be addressed. Another comment was the $50 fee is too much and will put indoor grows out of business with costs passed down to patients. Conservatively, the fee would amount to between 2% and 4% excise tax, depending on the size of a plant. In an industry that hasn't had no taxes before, it will be paid by cultivators. As in any business, costs increase for production, costs increase for consumers. Prop 215 guaranteed access for patients. It never guaranteed that the price would be kept artificially low by not addressing the impacts of growing the crop. Through our continued conversations with BOE, we are moving towards a model that will charge a tax on the following: a per ounce charge on the cannabis flowers, a per ounce charge on all cannabis leaves, and a much smaller fee for immature plants. With fees to be determined later, but to be in line with the 2% to 4% goal for revenue that I need for this program. People don't like the tagging or unique identifier. Colorado's using this, and it's been very successful for them. Advocates didn't like the fact that legal growers are paying the cost of bad actors. And quite frankly, the legal community has a responsibility to address the bad actors, in my opinion. That's often a part of a regulatory program. I'm a dentist by training. I have a license to practice dentistry, and a part of my license fee actually goes to enforcing against people who are not practicing appropriately. So this, I do believe that is consistent. And finally, as we have clearly stated since the second policy committee we have presented before it within the Assembly, and this is now my fourth policy committee, patients and caregivers growing for themselves are exempt. It's on page 14, line 31 of the bill. All the bills addressing medical marijuana are a work in progress. My staff and I are completely committed to making this bill a success, and as such, we'll be continuing to work with stakeholders through the upcoming recess. We have let this industry go nearly completely unregulated for nearly 19 years. With the real possibility of a successful ballot initiative to legalize for recreational use in 2016, it is imperative that we begin to form a regulatory structure around this industry before it is too late. I have two witnesses with me. With your permission, Mr.
Please,
Chair.
first witness.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Rico Mastrodonato with the Trust for Public Land, and we are in strong support of the bill, and I appreciate very much Assemblymember Wood and his staff being open and inviting to us on our input from the beginning iteration of this bill. TPL, Trust for Public Land, has been doing conservation work on the North Coast for 40 years, and we have literally protected thousands of acres of land in that region and have seen firsthand the environmental damage of marijuana cultivation to our landscapes, our water resources, wildlife habitat. At this point, all you have to do is input marijuana into a Google search, and the first 50 pages are going to be on the environmental damage done by this industry. So it's well known, it's well documented, and there are new cases happening almost on a weekly basis. We think 243 puts the right agencies, the right players together to put a regulatory framework together with Food and Ag and the Water Resources Control Board, along with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. And frankly, we're extremely excited about the revenue generation included in this bill. We believe that the industry should be paying for the environmental damage that's been done, and we think that 30% of this fee is a good place to start. But this is an incredibly large and profitable business and has done an enormous amount of damage in the state of California, and we think that this is an appropriate place to put the responsibility for cleanup and restoration. So I just want to thank Assemblymember Wood. This is a big issue. It's going to be further complicated by a very likely ballot initiative next year that's going to see recreational marijuana become potentially legal in California. So urge your aye vote.
Next.
Thank you, Chair and members. Reed Addis on behalf of Cal Trout. We're a conservation organization here in California. Our work is focused on protecting wild trout, salmon, steelhead here in California. To do that, we work on improving the habitat. We work on making sure there's enough water in the creeks for the fish and also the right temperature for those fish. Over the years, we've partnered with the state to do conservation projects up and down the state, but in particular on the North Coast. Increasingly, over the years, we've noticed that all our conservation efforts, or some of our conservation efforts, have been undermined by the watershed impacts occurring from marijuana cultivation. My colleague here laid out some of those problems. In particular, what we see is the water diversion, as well as wastewater impacts that are clogging the water, clogging the creeks rather, or not even providing enough water in the creeks in the first place for the fish. So we're very hopeful and supportive of this bill because we think it puts in place both a system to evaluate how many plants should be in a watershed, a system to make sure there's resources to the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Water Board to review and make sure there's appropriate regulatory oversight, as well as a grant program that allows organizations to go in and clean up the problems in the first place. So we're in strong support today. Thank you very much.